The story begins in the 1940s. A banker named Andy Dufresne sits alone in his car late at night, holding a gun while staring at his wife's house. Earlier that day, he discovered that his wife was having an affair with another man. Drunk, angry, and heartbroken, Andy thinks about revenge. But before anything happens, the scene cuts away. The next morning, both his wife and her lover are found dead. Andy is arrested immediately. During the trial, the evidence stacks up against him one piece at a time. The gun, the argument, the witnesses. And even though Andy calmly insists he's innocent, nobody believes him. The judge calls him cold and emotionless before sentencing him to 2 life terms at Shawshank State Prison. Just like that, his old life disappears forever. Shawshank is nothing like the outside world. The guards scream at prisoners constantly. The inmates look like ghosts walking through endless routines. New prisoners arrive chained together like animals. Among the inmates is a man named Red. Red has spent years inside Shawshank and is known as the guy who can get almost anything for the right price. When the new prisoners enter, the older inmates begin betting on who will break down first during their first night. Most people think Andy will collapse immediately, but surprisingly, he stays silent. That same night, another prisoner panics and cries uncontrollably. The guards beat him so brutally that he dies before morning. And that is Andy's first lesson inside Shawshank. Nobody cares if you survive. Days pass. Andy barely talks to anyone. Most prisoners think he's strange because he speaks softly and keeps to himself. But Red notices something different about him. Unlike everyone else, Andy doesn't seem fully defeated yet. One day, Andy finally approaches Red with a strange request. He wants a tiny rock hammer. Red laughs because the tool is ridiculously small. There's no way anyone could use it for anything dangerous. Andy explains that he enjoys collecting and carving rocks. Not long after, he also asks Red for movie posters. At first, these requests seem harmless. But Red slowly realizes that Andy thinks differently from everyone else inside Shawshank. Even prison hasn't completely taken away his imagination. Andy soon learns how brutal prison life truly is. A violent gang of inmates repeatedly targets him. They attack him whenever they get the chance. Andy fights back as much as he can, but prison slowly turns every day into survival. Meanwhile, Red watches Andy endure everything without becoming cruel himself. Years begin passing. Inside Shawshank, time moves differently. The same walls, the same routines, the same hopeless faces. Most inmates stop dreaming about freedom because dreaming only makes the pain worse. But Andy refuses to fully surrender mentally. That alone makes him different. One day, several inmates are assigned to work on the prison rooftop. While working, Andy overhears a guard complaining about taxes on an inheritance. Instead of staying quiet, Andy calmly offers financial advice. The guard becomes furious at first and nearly throws him off the roof. But Andy explains a legal way for the guard to protect his money. The guard eventually listens. In return, Andy asks for something unusual. Not money, not special treatment, just cold beers for his fellow inmates. That afternoon, the prisoners sit together on the rooftop drinking beer under the sunlight for the first time in years. Red later says that for a few brief moments, they felt like free men again. Word about Andy's financial skills spreads quickly through the prison. Soon, guards from all over Shawshank begin asking for his help with taxes and paperwork. Eventually, the prison warden notices him too. The warden presents himself as a religious man who believes in discipline and salvation. But underneath that image, he controls Shawshank through fear and corruption. He realizes Andy can become extremely useful. So instead of leaving Andy in dangerous prison labor, the warden transfers him to the prison library. Officially, Andy is there to help the elderly librarian Brooks. But in reality, the warden wants Andy to secretly handle financial work for him. And just like that, Andy becomes trapped in another kind of prison. Brooks is one of the oldest inmates in Shawshank. He has spent decades behind bars. The prison has become his entire world. One day, Brooks receives parole approval. Instead of celebrating, he panics. He's terrified of leaving Shawshank because he no longer understands the outside world. The other inmates are shocked. How could freedom scare someone? But Red explains something important. After enough years inside prison, the walls become normal. The routine becomes comforting. Eventually, prisoners become institutionalized. The prison owns their minds. Brooks leaves Shawshank anyway. Outside prison, Everything feels too fast and unfamiliar. He struggles to survive in ordinary life. And for the first time, the audience realizes something terrifying. Prison doesn't always end when the doors open. Unlike most prisoners, Andy keeps finding ways to stay mentally alive. He starts writing letters every single week asking the government for books and funding for the prison library. The prison staff ignores him for years, but Andy refuses to stop. Eventually, boxes of books and supplies finally arrive. The tiny prison library slowly transforms into something meaningful. For many inmates, it becomes the only peaceful place inside Shawshank. Andy even helps younger prisoners study and earn diplomas. Little by little, he changes the atmosphere of the prison without violence or power. Red begins admiring him deeply, because Andy somehow creates hope in a place designed to destroy it. One afternoon, Andy discovers a record inside one of the donated boxes. Instead of quietly listening alone, he locks himself inside the office and plays the music through the prison loudspeakers. Suddenly, the entire prison freezes. Every inmate stops moving. For a few moments, beautiful music echoes through Shawshank. Even prisoners who don't understand the language feel something powerful. Freedom. The guards rush to stop him immediately. Andy is punished with solitary confinement. But after he returns, he tells Red something unforgettable. He says there are things inside a person that nobody can touch or take away. That's what keeps him alive. Hope. Red disagrees completely. To Red, hope is dangerous. Hope only leads to disappointment inside prison. He tells Andy that hope can drive a man insane. But Andy refuses to abandon it. This difference between them becomes the emotional center of the story. Red survives by expecting nothing. Andy survives by believing something better still exists somewhere beyond the prison walls. Neither man fully understands the other yet, but their friendship continues growing stronger over the years. Years later, a young inmate named Tommy arrives at Shawshank. Unlike most prisoners, Tommy is energetic and talkative. Andy helps him study for exams and encourages him to improve himself. For a while, life inside Shawshank almost feels peaceful again. Then one conversation changes everything. Tommy casually mentions a story he heard in another prison about a criminal who confessed to murdering a banker's wife and her lover years earlier. The details sound exactly like Andy's case. For the first time in decades, Andy may finally have proof of his innocence. Red realizes this information could completely change Andy's future, and Andy immediately brings the story to the warden. But instead of helping him, the warden reacts strangely. Because by now, Andy has become too valuable to lose. Over the years, the warden built an illegal financial operation using prison labor and corruption, and Andy secretly manages all the paperwork. If Andy leaves Shawshank, the entire system could collapse. The warden knows this. So instead of helping Andy clear his name, he tightens his control over him. Andy becomes trapped between hope and despair once again. Red watches his friend slowly lose energy for the first time. Even the strongest man can only carry disappointment for so long. As the years continue passing, Andy begins acting differently. He speaks more about dreams, about places near the ocean, about freedom. Some inmates think he's losing his mind. Others think he's planning something impossible. Meanwhile, Red becomes worried. Because men who lose hope inside Shawshank often stop caring whether they live or die. Andy asks another inmate for a long rope. That only increases everyone's fears. The next morning, Andy doesn't appear for roll call. The guards immediately realize something is wrong, and Shawshank Prison begins descending into chaos. For nearly 20 years, Andy Dufresne survived one of the harshest prisons imaginable. Not through violence, not through fear, but through patience, intelligence, and hope. The Shawshank Redemption became one of the most beloved films ever made because it isn't really about prison. It's about holding on to humanity when the world tries to take it away. It's about friendship, freedom, and refusing to let darkness define your life.